When we think about workplace safety, we often imagine that following the rules is enough. Proper training, the right equipment, safety protocols in place surely. That's all we need to prevent accidents, right? But what happens when everything seems perfect on paper, yet something still goes terribly wrong? Today, we're examining real-world cases where workers did everything they were supposed to do, had all the protective gear they needed, yet accidents still occurred. This isn't about assigning blame. It's about understanding the hidden gaps in our safety systems and learning how to truly protect ourselves and others. The construction site incident, let me tell you about Marcus, a construction supervisor with 15 years of experience. His crew was demolishing an old commercial building in the heart of the city. Everyone on site had completed their safety certifications: hard hats, steel-toed boots, high visibility vests, safety glasses. The crew had it all. The company had invested thousands in equipment and training. On the surface, everything looked perfect. But beneath that surface, small cracks were forming. The demolition plan called for a methodical approach, taking down the building section by section. Marcus and his team had done this dozens of times before. They knew the procedures. They wore their gear religiously. But what they didn't know was that the building's structural integrity had been compromised in ways the initial survey hadn't detected. One afternoon, as the crew worked on the third floor, a supporting beam gave way unexpectedly. The collapse triggered a chain reaction. Workers scrambled to safety, their training kicking in automatically, thanks to their quick response and protective equipment. Serious injuries were avoided. But the incident raised a crucial question. If everyone followed the rules, why did this happen? The investigation revealed something that safety experts call the Swiss cheese model of failure. Imagine multiple slices of Swiss cheese stacked together. Each slice represents a layer of protection training, equipment, procedures, inspections. The holes in each slice represent weaknesses or gaps. Usually, these holes don't align. One layer's weakness is covered by another layer's strength. But sometimes, through a combination of circumstances, the holes line up perfectly, creating a clear path for failure. In Marcus's case, several factors aligned. The structural survey had been conducted years earlier. Environmental factors had weakened the building more than expected, and the demolition schedule was slightly accelerated due to weather concerns. None of these factors alone would have caused a problem. Together, they created a vulnerability: the chemical plant near me. Consider another scenario from a chemical processing facility. Sarah was a chemical engineer who had undergone extensive hazardous materials training. She wore the appropriate protective suit, respirator, and gloves while handling reactive compounds. The facility had state-of-the-art ventilation systems and emergency protocols. During a routine transfer procedure, something unexpected happened. A valve that had passed inspection just weeks earlier began to malfunction subtly. It didn't fail completely. That would have triggered immediate alarms. Instead, it developed a tiny leak that released fumes in quantities just below the detection threshold of the monitoring equipment. Sarah noticed something felt off. Her training had emphasized trusting your instincts, even when instruments say everything is fine. She followed protocol, stopped the operation, and evacuated the area. Later analysis confirmed that continuing the procedure could have led to a dangerous chemical exposure. This incident highlighted a critical truth. Sometimes the most important safety equipment is human judgment and the willingness to stop work when something does unfeel right, even if you can't point to a specific problem. Let's examine a manufacturing facility where safety culture was supposedly excellent. Workers received quarterly training updates. Personal protective equipment was readily available and properly maintained. Safety meetings happened every week. But here's what the safety audits missed: Information wasn't flowing effectively between shifts. The day's shift discovered a potential hazard with a machine guard that seemed slightly loose. They reported it, and maintenance was scheduled. However, the night shift was unclearly informed that the machine should be used with extra caution until repairs were completed. A night shift operator, fully trained and equipped, used the machine as normal. The guard failed during operation. Fortunately, the operator's quick reflexes and protective equipment prevented injury, but the close call revealed a systemic problem. Having training and equipment isn't enough if communication channels have gaps. One of the most insidious threats to workplace safety is something psychologists call normalization of deviance. This occurs when small rule-breaking behaviors become routine because they haven't caused problems yet. Take the example of a warehouse operation where forklift operators were extensively trained and required to wear seatbelts. Over time, some operators began skipping the seatbelt for short trips across the warehouse floor. It's only 20 feet, they'd think. I'm an experienced driver. Management didn't consistently enforce the rule during these brief movements. Supervisors themselves occasionally skipped it. The behavior became normalized until one day when an experienced operator making a short trip hit an unexpected slick spot on the floor, lost control, and was thrown from the forklift. The operator survived but faced a long recovery. The investigation found that training was current, equipment was maintained, and safety rules were documented. What failed was the everyday commitment to following those rules, even when they seemed inconvenient or unnecessary. Sometimes failures occur because we underestimate how environment and human psychology interact with our safety systems. A logistics company found this out during a heat wave. Workers had training on heat stress prevention and access to cooling stations and hydration, but the combination of production pressure, individual workers pushing through discomfort without speaking up, and supervisors focusing on deadlines created a situation where someone suffered heat exhaustion despite all the protective measures being theoretically in place. The issue wasn't the absence of safety measures, it was that human and organizational factors created pressure that overrode those measures. People didn't want to seem weak, worried about falling behind schedule, or assumed they could handle it because they'd worked in hot conditions before. So what do these stories teach us? First, safety is never a checklist you complete once. It's a continuous process of assessment, communication, and adjustment. Having training certificates and equipment is the foundation, but true safety requires vigilance at every moment. Second, organizational culture matters tremendously. Are workers empowered to stop operations when something feels wrong? Is there pressure, subtle or overt, to cut corners or rush through tasks? Does management truly prioritize safety over productivity when the two conflict? Third, communication must be crystal clear and continuous. Information about hazards, near miss, and concerns needs to flow freely in all directions between shifts, from workers to management, from safety officers to the field. Fourth, we must guard against complacency. Experience can be an asset, but it can also breed overconfidence. The most dangerous phrase in any workplace might be, "We've always done it this way." Closing thoughts, the goal of examining these failures is create fear or suggest that safety measures do work. Rather, it's to understand that effective safety requires more than equipment, and training it requires sustained attention, clear communication, strong organizational culture, and the humility to recognize that we can always improve. Every near miss is a lesson. Every incident, when properly investigated, reveals opportunities to strengthen our safety systems. When we learn from these moments, when we honestly assess not just what failed, but why it failed, despite our preparations, we build truly resilient safety cultures. Remember, safety isn't about perfection. It's about constant vigilance, honest communication, and the commitment to learn from every experience. That's how we ensure that training and equipment serve their purpose, protecting the people who depend on them.